Today we're excited to have Boshers talk to us about mentoring. And Boshers, as many of us know and recognize that name, has been a part of student ministry for quite a few decades, and he was at Student Impact at Willow Creek with a high school ministry of over 1,000, but not just numbers, incredible impact of what God did and changed as far as students' lives, and then was the director of Willow Creek Association students for quite a long time, and then God just laid on his heart because of his heart verse, 2 Timothy 2:2, to just start a community of people who mentor and to are in community together, and that was called Lead 222. And so now Bo is president of that, and so we're excited today to just listen to his wisdom. Bo and his team with Lead 222 do mentoring training called the Be With factor, and they focus on mentoring middle school and high school students, and home field training focused on home and parents. And these trainings happen around the country, and we'll talk about those later if you're interested in hosting one of those or attending one of those on the lead222.com page. But for this training, we're going to focus today specifically on adult mentoring. And so, Bo, we're going to jump right in and let you just talk to us and give us your wisdom. And so the first question we have is, what is the main goal of a spiritual mentor?
Well, Andy, I think as a mentor that, your focus is you always want to help the person you're mentoring become the best they are capable of becoming. And this is not about competing to be better than someone else. It's teaching the person you're mentoring become the best they can be based on the gifts God has given them. I think that's the main focus.
Well, can you break that down a little bit? Like, what are a few examples of helping people become the best they can be?
And I think one example would be helping them to identify and use the gifts God has given them to their full potential to honor Jesus. And, God has given every youth leader that's listening to this training and volunteer that's listening to this training spiritual gifts. And especially for the ones of us who are focused in on youth ministry, we've given an opportunity to really make a kingdom difference. And what is in our favor as we lean into understanding that God is the one who transforms life. He's promised that he's going to do that transformational work. So the youth leader, what their responsibilities are is that they must do their part in staying obedient to God. And I believe as a mentor, our role is to help that leader with that obedience, to stay obedient to what God has called them to. One of the verses I like using in mentoring is Hebrews 12:2, and it talks about keeping our eyes on Jesus as the source and perfecter of our faith. And that really does take obedience. So I think a part of the mentor's role is helping them not only become the best to reach their potential, but understanding that that's going to take obedience.
So what does mentoring on obedience look like in a real practical way?
Well, it's different for each person you're mentoring, but most of the time it involves disciplines, being prepared, working hard, staying focused, all in what God has called you to. And on a real practical side, I say one of the struggles I've personally seen with mentoring youth leaders over the years is that many times youth leaders have, and again, the ones on the call, you probably can identify that, it's staying focused on the ministry that God has called you to. I've seen youth leaders get really caught up to the comparison game of trying to become like someone else or comparing their ministry to someone else, and that's just a bad deal. Not playing the comparison game and staying obedient to the ministry God has called you, it really does take obedience. And again, the role of a mentor, I think, is trying to bring focus to that constantly with the person you're mentoring. Again, practically, I like using the saying, coming from a coaching background, I always kind of have coaching kind of analogies, but the big time's where you're at. And when you lose focus of where you're at, you really will miss the target of what God has called you to. Again, I think one of the great examples right now, Andy, is, the Winter Olympics are going on right now, and I love watching those the Olympics, and especially the stories. And it was interesting. Just recently, I just heard of one story. There's a crazy competition. If you've seen it or watched it, when these athletes are skiing and they stop and then they shoot rifles. And it's just a pretty intense kind of competition, unusual, but pretty intense. And then I heard a story as we were talking about in this Olympics of one of our U.S. athletes. His name was Matt Hemus, I think it was, and he was from the U.S. And this was in the Olympics in the past, had an opportunity to win the gold. It was a done deal. He was on his last shot. He's coming up, to that lane to shoot at the target, and he lost focus. And really, what's kind of sad, he went to the wrong target. And so he ended up shooting at the very last target, the wrong target, and ended up costing him the gold. And as mentors, I think that one of the things we have to help those we're mentoring is to stay focused on the prize that Paul talks about, on that goal. Philippians 3:13-14, talks about, I press on towards the goal to win the prize for which has God called me. And so that's just some examples of trying to help those we mentor stay focused on the goal that God has called them to.
That's good. As mentors, and Bo, you've been, over the years, what I would consider a mentor in my life, and everybody has their own unique style, and some of us mentor different ways. So give us maybe some of your unique expressions that you use when mentoring that might be helpful for us to just have as examples.
Oh, thanks, Andy. You kind of hit on. We talked about mentoring. The cool things we have to remember to be a real effective mentor is be who God's made you to be, and use the personalities and gifts He's given you to mentor those you have the privilege to mentor. And for me, again, coming from a background, you've ever been mentored by me, and Andy, I've had a chance to be in your life over the years. I mean, you're going to hear sport analogies and trying to help us understand that through the truths that we read in Scripture. And I get those from over the years from different coaches to help me. I like reading books about, coaches, and I really do see, because I love their leadership of building team. And there's a lot of comparisons there that really helped me over the years. But I like teaching those I mentor to use, and I use these expressions. And one of the expressions I really like, if we get real practical, is think like a rookie and play like a pro. And I know that's real sports focused, but the ones I mentor, it's kind of right in my sweet spot. And over the years, the reason I use that phrase is over years I've seen a lot of youth leaders struggle with how to stay confident without becoming prideful, and it's not easy. This is really true when you see when a young youth leader comes in and they start to realize that they are gifted, and people start paying attention to their teaching and giving them compliments, and maybe they're getting asked to teach more, or their territory is kind of expanding a little bit, and the ministry is growing, and that's all good stuff. I mean, that's God's blessing. But as a mentor, if I see that, I want to coach up these confident men and women to be very careful in this time of God's favor. And that's where I use the expression, think like a rookie and play like a pro. I ask those that I'm mentoring, have they ever had experience of being a rookie in something and then getting called up, like on the varsity team, so to speak? And it's quite an experience if you've had this experience. That's happened several times in my life where you get called up and you're pretty excited. It's a pretty unique time where someone's identified your strengths and gifts and calls you to a higher playing field. And here's what I love. If you can remember at that time, as a rookie, you have a different perspective. You really do. And I think one of the things I try to call out in mentoring to remind the ones I'm mentoring, that's why I keep reminding them to think like a rookie, because a rookie has passion, and they're sold out for the love of the game. I mean, they're involved in it. They're just passionate about what they're doing. A rookie also has humility. They know there's still a lot to learn, and they're ready to learn, but they've got confidence, but they keep their humility involved in that. They say, hey, it's an exciting time, but I need to learn. I know I've got many years in front of me. I think another characteristic of a rookie is they have a positive attitude. I love rookies because they're just happy to be there. I mean, they're excited about being in that, between the lines, so to speak, in this higher playing field, and their attitude's positive. They're willing to do anything and do whatever it takes to be a part of this team. And the last thing from the characteristics, one of the things is I think rookies believe that they can do it, that they can play like a pro. They They want to make a difference. Now, if I was mentoring you, Andy, which I have over the years, but if you push pause, if I was mentoring someone, I'd say, those are pretty good attributes for youth leaders to keep, not only while they're in ministry, but their whole life. And so it's great stuff for me. It's material that I think is practical, and it allows me to make sure that these young guys and girls that I'm mentoring most of the time in this stage is, hey, listen, stay focused, stay obedient, be reminded to keep your attitude right. So, that's some of the examples of things I use.
That's good. Those are really good. I've never really thought of it that way. That's good stuff to consider. I think there are people on the phone who might have had the privilege of having mentors in their life, but there are a lot who maybe wonder, how do I find a mentor? What does that look like? What are the steps? So can you talk a little bit about, if, I wanted you, let's say I'm somebody out there and I wanted somebody to mentor me, what would be the right things to ask that person?
Well, I think what you have to look for is, if one of the focuses, I think, is you got to make sure that the person who is mentoring, if that's the angle you're taking, Andy, if that's your question, if I'm looking at someone who's mentoring me, is that what you're asking?
Yeah. So if I wanted someone to mentor me, what would be the right things to ask that person?
I think I think the first thing is that to be able to step in and make sure that they want to do this. I mean, like that you've got to use discernment here, but you've got to, if a person's going to mentor, you've got to make sure that their motives are right, that they really are doing this. Because I often look at it, if I'm going to mentor someone, I kind of flip it. If I say, what do I need to be effective as mentoring, and I need to look for that same qualities in the person's going to mentor me. And I really think that person has to really care for me. I use a strong statement, is you must love those you're mentoring. And what I mean by that is that when you mentor someone, you really need to be committed to prayer. You need to be committed to asking God to give you leadings to how you can lean into where He's already working to the person you're mentoring, and really, accelerate what God is already doing. And that takes the commitment on the mentor side to pray and ask, how can I serve this person? And when you pray and you're focused, there's a connection that comes. You really do care and love those you mentor, and that's a part of a mentor. So you want to pay attention that that's kind of the attitude. And I think you also have to make sure that person's going to speak truth to you. Good mentors know. Again, I use the analogy in sports again. It's who I am, but they know when to throw the challenge flag, Andy. It's what like when you see these coaches that have the ability, like in a football game, they have the ability to throw that flag. And they have that power. And that when they throw that flag, what they're saying is, I want to stop and review the call. And I think mentors have to speak the truth and not be afraid to throw the challenge flag. And what that looks like is that if I was throwing that flag to you, that what that means is I'm asking you, hey, Andy, let's review what you just said there. Let's take a look at why you're in this situation. I'm going to challenge you to some things, because I think when we look at this, you're going to see that, you stepped out of bounds here, my man. So you're speaking the truth, whether it's on correcting or whether it's always in love, but you're speaking truth. So you definitely want a mentor that's going to speak truth to you. That's key. And rewind the tape when needed. And then I think you want a mentor that models what they're mentoring, what they're teaching. You want someone who, if they say, hey, live this way, that they are doing everything they can to be Christ in all areas of their life too. Now that means that they're sharing with you when they fail. It doesn't mean they got it all together, but it is going to mean that, hey, my desire is to be Christ-like in all areas of my life. So you want a mentor that's modeling that you see it, that they're living what they're teaching. And the last thing I think, Andy, you really do want to look for. Again, I flip this on what I think is what I want to make sure when I'm mentoring and what I want from a mentor. They need to be encouragers. You want someone who's going to encourage you and celebrate what God is doing, and really remind you of, because ministry is hard, and really remind you to speaking words of encouragement that's true. Like if I was, when I've had mentoring, like, Andy, you are a leader. God has given you leadership gifts. Steward them well. You're doing a great job. So you want that from them. So that's some of the qualities, but I think those are important.
And, we're assuming that when you have a mentor in your life that you meet either via phone, video conference or face-to-face with that mentee. So as a mentor, how much do I need? So let's say I'm a mentor. How much do I need to prepare for the meetings? Whose responsibility is it to lead the agenda?
And I think that is an excellent question. And for, all of us on the line here that are mentoring or being mentored and becoming mentors ourselves, that's the kind of the cool part of everyone listening on this call today. But one of the things I would say that it honestly depends on the age of the person. I mean, you got to take that in consideration. And, we talked about the constellation of mentoring where you may have wiser mentors in your life and you have peers and younger people that you're mentoring. But as we focus on just kind of if we were in that mentor role, I think it's very important at the very beginning that you make it clear to those you're mentoring what the expectations are. So I would practically say, hey, Andy, we're going to meet next week, and here's what I need for you to do. And, I will give you a challenge or give you, hey, listen, why don't you come back with 3 questions, and we'll continue with this conversation. So I think you're really making it very clear what the expectations are and what these gatherings, every time we meet, what they're going to look like. So the expectation is placed on you as the mentee. If I'm mentoring you and you're mentee, you've got to come prepared. And so if that's the case, you need to come prepared. So then I show up, and you're going to have questions you're going to ask me, and I'm going to do the best I can to listen and guide and to try to give input. Or if I said next time I'm going to bring the agenda, Andy, and I just need you to show up, I have some questions for you. So what I'm saying, it can work on both ways. The important thing is you've got to make sure it's clear. You don't want to let that just to be assumed that whoever's showing up is ready for that mentoring time.
Well, Bo, one of the things I appreciate about Lead 222, the organization that you helped found or you founded, is you have a playbook, and in that playbook, the mentee has some responsibility, a workbook to do before the actual session, and then the mentor or the coach has stuff to go through before, and then kind of guides that discussion. But both are on the same page, and I just think, you do a great job at that. I know a lot of people who are listening to this podcast are from the Lead 222 community, but there might be some who are outside that community who are wondering what that is. And I just want to affirm that, lead222.com is a great place to check that out. You just do a really good job of making sure both are prepared with how that community runs. So I just want to affirm you on that.
Yeah,
I want to go ahead.
No, I was saying thanks, Andy. I know that playbook is, that's what it's there for. It's just a tool to help guide, and I'm really pleased with the results we're getting back. And whether mentors are very, veterans at it, it's still good to have kind of a playbook. Every one of us need playbooks to help us. And then for those who are just starting off mentoring, it really has been a good resource. And so, I'm thankful for that as well.
Well, you use a lot of coaching sayings because you originally were a coach, and you already used a couple today. But are there any more coaching sayings that you use during your mentoring time?
Yeah, Moni, probably 2 more than I can even remember. Some of them just come, like I said, because it's just back to, what a mentor has is passion. I do have passion, and I really have learned a lot. Like I said, I read, it's one of the books that I read are about coaches, and because I think there's a lot of leadership there. But there's many, a few come to mind. One I like said, I got you by the face mask, and that's kind of one of the direct ones I use with the guys that I know understand that. And if you ever play football, have you ever seen where a coach can grab your face mask or wherever you got someone by the face mask, it's pretty intense. You're looking right at them, and so I use that expression like to really indicate this is really important. If I in practice would be like, hey, Andy, I got you by the face mask right now. Well, you would know what I mean by that. It's like, hey, pay attention. This is serious, and you need to listen up. And it really, kind of that pause. Jesus did that all the time. when he would say, Boshers, here's listen up. He would stress that in Scripture, and it would mean pay attention when he would repeat himself. And so that's kind of the idea there. Is I got face mask is one. I'm trying to think. Another one I probably use to kind of help with teaching disciplines and being prepared is I use a statement that, it's better to sweat on the practice field than to bleed on the battlefield. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but the idea is that, listen, you got to work hard. You got to be prepared and have disciplines. And the more disciplined and prepared you are on the practice field, well, you're going to win more battles when you're out there really fighting the battle that God's called us to. And the enemy is alive. And you got to practice beforehand. You can't just go out there unprepared. And so that's where I would challenge someone I'm coaching and say, listen, let me ask you, how prepared were you? That takes practice. You need to practice that discipline and being obedient. So there's many others, but you get the idea. Just kind of the main thing is use the style of who God's made you to be. Everyone's got their own style. And I know everyone's not into sports and all that, but you just be who you are and use whatever you need to stress the importance of mentoring.
Well, as we close up, I just want to ask you a couple things. One is, how critical is it in our adult lives to have a mentor? How important? And then as you answer that one, if you have any closing comments, just give us some of your closing comments.
Andy, that question, and I mean, that's a real important question. I know this sounds extreme when I say how important is to have a mentor. I think it's the top priority in your life. I really do. I can't imagine not having a coach, a voice. Back to the things I mentioned to you earlier, that someone who really loves you and speaks truth into your life and cares for you, encourages you, and however you express it, just lets you know that hey, you're staying focused. It's essential if you really want to be all that God's made you to be. I really do believe that. I think it's a pattern in Scripture. I think we see this, the be with factor that we talk about often, that when Jesus talked about, he chose his disciples to be with them. I really do believe that you can see this pattern of mentoring all throughout Scripture. And so I don't care how old you are, what age you're at, whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned leader, you need men and women to speak truth into your life. I think absolutely essential. If you want, and I'll get back to the saying, if you want to be the difference maker and reach the potential that God has given you, I think you need people to speak into your life. So, and then the last thing for me is just, you mentioned kind of a closing comment. I just want to say to all on the line today that, hey, the key here is not only have mentors in your life to become a mentor. 2 Timothy 2:2. The skills of a mentor are sharpened on the way. We are called to invest in others. And so the vision of changing youth ministry culture, we focus on student ministry, I think comes from young people, our students that we work with. They see this lifestyle of a mentor. And I really, really believe that if a young person learns this value early through modeling it through a leader in their life, they will step up to the game and become mentors themselves and for a lifetime. And that's how I think we change a generation with the love of Christ.
So thanks so much for your time today. And I know there are people on the phone who, after you discussing and talking about mentorship, would be like, I need a mentor. And so I just encourage those who are listening to this podcast, if you don't have one, to find one. And then another way that might help that is to take a look at Lead 2